Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to week 4. This is marking the 1/4 of the way through the class once we get through this week. So, with that in mind, you notice I'm not starting with the PowerPoint just yet. I wanted to bring up a couple of things for this week. I wanted to do a class reflection where I really just kind of want to get a pulse on how this class is going for you personally, getting some feedback from you, how you feel about it, if there's anything that you think needs to be changed, is it meeting your expectations? So you will see that in our learning module for this week. I'm really trying to keep the workload a little bit lighter this week because I am having you read 2 chapters. So you will find that in addition to the 2 chapters, that will be chapter 4 and chapter 12, you'll have this class reflection, which really is just a few sentences. It can be maybe 3 sentences and it's good. It's only worth 5 points. No right or wrong. It's just to kind of give me an idea on what your comfort level is at this point. And then we've got our discussion board for week 4. And then we will have our matching questions, which again, I'm doing both of those in a little bit different format. I'm trying to, as we go through, I'm learning more efficient ways of doing things. So with the discussion board, this may or may not be more efficient. I think for this particular week, based on the topic, it may be a little bit better, but it's going to be one gigantic thread. Now, I know it's probably going to drive those of you that are very logical thinkers a little bit crazy because it's just going to seem like there's no organization to it, but I think based on a subject like what we're going to be talking about this week, having a non-fragmented discussion board is actually going to be better. So if you can bear with me this week when we're discussing topics that are more linear and a little less controversial or a little less opinionated, I'll go back to the format where everyone has their own thread. But for this week, humor me and go with the one gigantic thread. It's actually a lot easier to grade this way, but that's beside the point. And then also on the matching questions, I am doing them in a test format. So please be aware it's not a test. Wow, it's not even showing up yet because I'm still working on it. But it will look like a test. It's not a test. It's your matching questions. This kind of assignment is ridiculously tedious, I think, for everyone involved. I think it is a really, really great way, though, to reinforce the terminology that we learn each week. So I'm going to, you'll see it some weeks, in some weeks you won't, but I think if it works well this week, I will keep it in that test format, but please, again, know that it's not a test. It is just the way that I'm choosing to do the format. So moving on to that, let's get into the PowerPoints. I will start with chapter 4 as soon as I can get it to open. Okay, chapter 4. I chose to do chapter 4 and chapter 12 together this week because you will find that there's some redundancy, and if I put chapter 12 later on in the semester, you'll be thinking, well, we already talked about this. So let's start with chapter 4, socioeconomic status and how it can affect health overall. So first of all, there's 3 components of socioeconomic status. One is economic status itself, and this is in regards to income and wealth. Wealth, I love the definition of this in the text, but we have to take into consideration that we're talking about countries other than our own. So wealth is described as accumulated worth of the household's resources such as in a home, auto, livestock, and other consumer goods. I guess there are plenty of people in the U.S. that have livestock that would be considered part of wealth as well. Then we have occupational status. So this really takes into account your occupation, your career, your chosen job field. So with limited job skills, an individual may end up with a higher risk or lower paying job. Unfortunately, this is the case. Very limited job skills really limit what you can do. Also, manual laborers have a higher mortality and morbidity rate. And think about it, the instance that comes to my mind are the coal miners in the South. So they have a much higher incidence of lung diseases. Think about construction workers. I'm sure there's plenty of you out there, firefighters. Think about the risks that you take and some of the environmental elements that someone um, in those fields might be subjected to, and how they are going to run a higher risk of injuries and perhaps certain diseases based on that. Next is educational status, and education is measured in years of education completed, degrees earned, certificates, and diplomas. Those with a higher education level may have better access to care and medications. They may also be more involved and be more of a health consumer, really taking the part of being proactive, knowing when they should and shouldn't see the doctor. And obviously, those with higher education will usually have higher wealth and have better access to health care. Health of vulnerable populations. We talked a little bit about vulnerable populations last week when we were speaking about research. Some of those that are considered vulnerable populations, not only within the socioeconomic standpoint, but also for research or other health issues, are prisoners, refugees, um, older adults, people with mental illness or physical impairments, immigrants, um, ethnic, racial, religious, and tribal minorities, and of course, children. So you look at these groups within the population and you see that they may not have equal access to health care or even the power to demand it. Think about a child. The child is relying on the voice of the adult to demand access to health care. So this is again, these vulnerable populations are again one of the reasons that health disparities exist. And you'll find me use the term health disparity a lot through this class, especially through this particular week, and it is on the matching questions. So the role of race and ethnicity in health. There are going to be certain physical attributes such as skin color, hair type, any of those superficial things are what defines race. Race is not necessarily, I don't want to say it's not a biological thing, but it really is superficial, just coming down to differences of skin color. I mean, you could go as far as eye color if you want to go back in recent history and talk about races. Ethnicity is based on dimensions such as cultural heritage, tribal affiliation, nationality, race, religion, and language. So I'm sure that there are some of you in class that belong to different ethnicities than some of the rest of us. This adds a lot of really interesting components to the role of health and health care and access to health care. So when you think about different ethnic groups or cultures, they may have the same food preferences. They may celebrate um, special occasions differently. Um, so many things that we can apply to ethnicity and culture. Um, I don't want to leave race out of it, but because it's a superficial thing, I don't think that when we see differences in health, in very rare instances, is it actually a race um, difference. It's usually a difference based in ethnicity. So I was referring to culture. Culture is a way of living, believing, behaving, communicating, and understanding the world that is shared by members of a social unit, whether it's religious, ethnic, or etc. So think about your particular religion and how that, in a sense, is a culture in which you live. It influences the way you dress. It influences the food that you eat, the way that you celebrate with food. customs, morals, rules, values, language. We talked about that when we were talking about ethics, how our culture really influences how our code of ethics is developed. So when we talk about disease, there are a few different belief systems out there for the cause of disease. I'm kind of skipping around, but it will tie together at the end of the slide, I promise. So, cause of disease, some people do believe that it's mechanical malfunction, so to speak. They see it as a breakdown or dysfunction of the body. Then there is the moralistic approach that sees good health as a result of clean living and disease as some sort of punishment for wrongdoing. You have the supernatural approach, which sees disease as a curse from God or a demonic possession or some sort of other curse. And there certainly are cultures out there that subscribe to the supernatural approach. Then the disequilibrium. And this is kind of my own approach to health. I see it as more of an imbalance within the body. Something's out of whack, something's unbalanced. I'm a big believer. I don't know if you guys have gotten the gist of the fact that I'm kind of an old hippie, but I believe in chakras, and I can tell when chakras are unbalanced, and that's usually when I get sick. So disequilibrium is that lack of balance, such as hot, cold, yin, yang, or chakras. So think about your own particular culture and how that forms your approach to the cause of disease. That's your food for thought for this particular chapter. So discussion question is going to be based on health disparities and access to health care. So really just a reminder, be professional, be respectful. I was so pleased with everyone's responses in this last week. It was a little bit of a controversial topic when we start talking about ethics in research and ethics overall. It can be very personal. And I was so very pleased with everyone and the level of respect, the level of engagement with everyone. Please keep up the good work. If you have any questions, and this, I am so grateful to everyone sending me questions. If you had a weird glitch on the test, or if you submitted your paper funny, your ethical reflection funny, please email me or post it in the Ask My Instructor. I am really happy to check. I do make mistakes, so I am happy when you bring something to my attention and say, hey, this doesn't seem right to me. I am more than happy to look at it, and if I made a mistake, I will fix it. So anyway, that is chapter 4, and I will see you in chapter 12 here in just a bit.